Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as it deserves to be praised. We definitely ask Allah that He confers His blessings upon Muhammad and his family and his companions. With regards to our discussion today, probably at the end of it, inshallah, we will then go to what is a bit of a digression in terms of what's holding back people from certain cultural backgrounds, like why we were trying to find out, because there are people who obviously look at Islam from a lens of their culture. Sometimes they look at Islam from the lens of their ethnic group or where they come from, whether country-wise or things of that sort. So when I initially compiled this was actually inspired by some WhatsApp message that came in quite a few years back, mashallah. And it was about the fact that there are remnants that can be observed with regards to the fact that Allah sent prophets and messengers in different times and to different nations. And usually this becomes very clear and apparent when you look at like the traditions of the people, or sometimes when you look at how they either clothe themselves or the concepts that they basically use, like subscribe to, meaning the concept that they consider to be the defining factor of their tradition or their culture. And hence, if you look at the concept of Ubuntu in that sense, you sort of find that similar connotation to it. That it's as though this is a concept that had to be shared for quite a number of times throughout a certain day and age, until it became a kind of a description for certain nationalities. For example, you find the Sotus, they have the same concept, they call it Boto, and the Xhosas as well, Ubuntu. Sometimes they say Uluntu, and also we have Zulu saying Ubuntu, and Swatis likewise. And that in and of itself, the diversity of that is owed to the fact that this must be a concept that had to be very much widespread, and the possibility of that being the case is that this could have been the concept that was taught by an individual who was a propagator of it, and in this case it would definitely have to be a prophet or a messenger to basically be the one who propelled this concept. And as we will go through the slides quickly, we will notice some of those, and this is the comparative aspect of it. And I want to emphasize at this point while we start that this is a speculation. So this is not something that is cut and dry. This is a speculation. This is a comparative observation, and that is to say, it can be, and it can be correct. It can also be incorrect. It could be a coincidence as well in certain aspects. But we will see how this correlation becomes a bit more interesting when you get more and more things, coming through in that very same nature, or when you see the relationship taking place over and over a couple of more times than the usual time. And the goal of this slide initially was to answer the question, is Islam for black people? This was the question, because this is the question at hand, where a lot of people get phased off or far away from Islam because they see it from a cultural lens. And one of our brothers correctly said, my culture is Islam. And you find that this is very common among Muslims who have been born within a Muslim family, that they have not subscribed to any other way of life or way of practice or way of engagement except Islam. And this is the same discussion I had with one brother some few years back in one of the universities when we had some conference over there. And when I asked him, what's your background? He said Islam. I said, I understand that part, because obviously we are gathered as Muslims, but what is going further than that? But the point was, his main go-to was Islam. And so this then feeds the idea that some people find Islam to be secondary to themselves, while others find Islam to be primary and probably everything about themselves. And so this in effect in dawah becomes also either an instrument, if not something that could be an impediment to people embracing Islam. Because those who embrace Islam at a later stage, they see Islam as secondary to who they are, where they come from. Like for myself, I might end up saying, I am a Zulu Muslim, or I'm Zulu, then I'm Muslim, which is incorrect. Because you're self-proclaimed Muslim, and you are Zulu by default, or Xhosa by default, and Sotho by default. So it should be the Islam that takes the precedence, and that's why I had to press him a bit more. And MK said he's from a Memon background, so that's basically where when we get to the crux of the matter. But in and of this matter, in and of itself, as I said, for a lot of people, they look at a certain race, a certain ethnic group, immediately they say Muslims. Like right now, we are gathered here. You might not be shocked and surprised for someone who is unaware of what makes a person a Muslim. When he walks in, he would say, yeah, I went and visited that class or that session, and there were Muslims, and there were blacks, and there were, you understand what I'm saying? They will say in the same sentence, there were Muslims, and there were also black people, some who were Xhosas, some who were Sutus, some were Malawian, and so forth. You see my point? While everyone who's in here is actually Muslim, but the connotation of Muslim has been, in one sense or another, been made to appear in a certain, I would say, ethnic background, if not in a certain like appearance per se. Like my beard is very short for me to qualify to fit that definition. That's one of the things they look at. At least I have the hat and the thawb to basically complement that. So when I say to someone, no, I'm Muslim, they say, okay, yeah, we can see, you know. But without the big beard and, you know, without the topi and everything, someone might dismiss me from being a Muslim. So I'm explaining this to you, brothers, because you will have to deal with that matter at length. Besides what you have been equipped with, talking to people, telling them what is Tawheed, what is Sunnah, you have to worship Allah alone without any partners, because this is the fundamental, this is the foundation. And I believe the other facilitators have communicated that very well, that the goal of da'wah is not to win the debate or, you know, to become the one who is better, like, you know, eloquent than the other person, but it is to invite people and prescribe them to worship Allah alone without partners, and to follow Muhammad, peace be upon him. They have no salvation except through that manner. وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِ غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا لَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ. It will not be accepted from him. وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. And in the hereafter, you'll be among those who are losers. إِنَّ الدِّينَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ الْإِسْلَامِ. And so when we communicate these things, and I hope this is not used as the primary tool, taking it from me, to not use this content as the primary tool of your dawah. The primary tool of your dawah is the Quran, and it is the Sunnah, and it is the statements and the history of the Sahaba and how they basically implemented the deen. These are the pioneers of Islam. These are the point of reference for Islam. But when we bring this up when you have communicated that, but the person still says, I hear what you're saying. We deal with this a lot. Myself and Ridwan can be a witness to these type of things, and other brothers as well. Where you're talking to a very old black man, you explain everything, and he's going to say in Zulu, ngiyakuza ndoda into ishoyo. Kodwa manje angiboni mina indawo yethu thina mina phela ngumZulu mina. Like they'll say, I hear everything you say, my son, but at the end of the day, I'm a Zulu. Now you are stuck because he understands the fundamentals and he accepts the fundamentals, but he still has this understanding that these fundamentals, if I accept them, I have to denounce my ethnic background, my being Zulu or my being Xhosa, you know. Some people, they say he left his culture and then took the Indian culture, for example. Why? Because, as I said, some people are the primary definition of Muslims by their appearance at times, or their ethnic group, or the language they speak. Like anyone who speaks Arabic, some people might think they are Muslims, and yet they are Arab Christians, and they are Arab Jews, and Arab atheists, and whatnot. As soon as then they say, khalas, this guy is a Muslim. You understand? That's how they got away with a lot of crime as well. They dress like us, and then they speak some Arabic, maybe some total nonsense, but those who are unaware of the language, they think these are Muslims, they came and destroyed this place and whatnot. So from that angle, I want us to discuss this particular matter then. The name of the creator in the Zulu language is called Umvelinqangi. I know this is a big task for some people because of the nga in it. Don't worry about it, because usually in Islam, you have been provided with the proper names that Allah is called by the name Allah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. But what I wanted to highlight with this particular matter is the fact that if you would ask anyone who knows the Creator from the Zulu background, who is Umvelinqangi, they would tell you this is the name of God. Or they would tell you this is the one who created the heavens and the earth, or he's the one who is the Creator, who is the first of all, meaning the one who came before everything else, and everything came by him and through him. And they also do not associate any family or tribe or race or color or ethnicity to the one who is called Umvelinqangi. And this is a very important understanding, because this is the profile that they generally have. And so you then look at that, and then you understand in Islam as well, we have a surah which gives us the profile of Allah. Very nice and beautifully and explicitly. And I guarantee you, any person who believes that there's a creator, when you tell them this is how God or how Allah is described, they would essentially agree with you 100%. And this Surah Al-Ikhlas, where, Allah tells us, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, that Allah is only one, without the second one. You don't have velingang, you only have velingang, even in the Zulu context or the Zulu understanding of the existence of the Creator. Now, in that very same note, they understand that He is the one through whom everything basically exists, meaning He's the one who is responsible for the existence. So therefore, they are not really atheists. They are not the ones who deny the existence of the Creator. We will get to the issue where things start getting mixed up and conflated. But for now, we understand that at least the fundamental discussion you ought to have with a person who is very strongly, I would say, connected to his cultural background, who, let's say, someone who's very, very traditional. One thing that you can always find a ground of agreement and discussion is the existence of the Creator. And from there, you can then elevate the subject to why this Creator is the only one who deserves worship. Because that's the whole point. This is why you notice all the messengers, they did not come to tell people that Allah exists. But they said, Ya qawmi, u'budu Allah ma lakum min ilahin ghayru. But rather they said, oh my people, oh my community, worship Allah alone. You do not have any other who is worthy of worship besides Him. Why did they not tell them, believe that Allah exists? Because this is also close to nature, what is known as the fitrah. And generally, a lot of people in different African ethnic backgrounds, they have this fitrah intact of the existence of Allah. They can be involved in other things, obviously, that are against the worship of Allah, which we will try to highlight, inshallah, in our discourse. But generally, their fitrah is intact in terms of the fact that Allah exists, and He is the one responsible for the existence of everyone in the whole entire creation. And so that's the foundation. This is Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. And you find even the Arabs in the olden days, during the time of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they would be asked, who created the heavens and the earth? La yaqulun Allah. Allah tells us about them that they will respond without even hesitating and say it is Allah. Even in their talbiyah, when they would make, like Hajj and Tawaf, going around to Umrah, you go around the Kaaba, you say, Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika laka labbaik, innal hamda, like that. They would say that, and then they'll say, Illa sharikun huwa lak, tamlikuhu wa ma malak. When in their talbiyah, they will add that the one whom we associate with you is actually among those who you own and they belong to you. Meaning the idol that they worship, they still regard this idol as inferior to Allah, such that he is a possession of Allah. Even what this idol or this deity that they have selected and added for Allah and associated with Allah, they would consider even that deity to be what? To be a possession of Allah, even what it possesses. For example, if it's an individual that is being worshipped and he owns something and he is not Allah, then they would say, Tamlikuhu, you own him, wa ma malak, even that which he owns as well. Now, this is the point in case with regards to people of the same background, especially traditionalist people. In most cases, they recognize the Lordship of Allah. The problem happens when it comes to the worship of Allah. And so when you bring these up, they might agree all the way with you. But the goal, once again, is for them to acknowledge why Allah alone deserves to be worshipped. And when you express to them that you have one God who created you without any partners, He did not have any assistance from your ancestors, from your parents, from your father. So why should, when He is given what He deserves, then it must be divided and be split and be given to other people? When you agree that He is the sole handler of the whole entire universe, such that there's a belief among them, which we will explore quickly, inshallah. They believe that these are like agents of Allah, the spirits or the souls of those who passed on. We will get into that, inshallah, so that we clarify and how we could tackle that matter. Because it's very, very, very much close to the idea of wasila that we find among Muslims. And some Muslims, they fall short in that matter when they misunderstand the concept of wasila, how it works and so forth. And then you get, like that kind of running in circles when you're dealing with that matter. And you find that this is usually the case where shirk happens. Shirk happens where you are trying to find intermediaries and means to Allah, and you find even people of the traditional background, this is how they understand it. They say, yes, we believe one God. But then why when you worship, then you have to include so-and-so, your ancestors, your great-grandfather and whatnot? That's where things start getting mixed up. But in a nutshell, we are observing the fact that the universality of the word among these people, necessitates that there must have been a proponent that told them this is the name that you should address the Creator with, or this is the name of the Creator. Because if it was everyone's field to pick, we in our own family would have our own name. And in the next family, and the next surname, they would have their own name for the Creator. But you find that this is a standard name for the Creator, likewise, right through. And this is very, very fundamental and important when you observe it from this angle. So, like I said, speculation. This is speculation, as I said. I'll keep making that emphasis until we go right through. Because as I said, Allah, we know, He sent prophets, different prophets in different tribes and nations and languages. And obviously, they would come with teachings, certain fundamental teachings. Like the concept of Ubuntu is a concept, as you find it, its universality is an indication that it had to be from an influence or an influencer in that sense, who would basically be able to promote this idea effectively, such that everyone adopts it and everyone sort of expects the other person to be. Such that if you do not behave in a manner that is in line with it, they will say, Aganabo Ubuntu, he doesn't have, you know, like the element of Ubuntu in him. And usually that's a bad thing. When they say Ubuntu, then it means you're a terrible person. You've basically lost the essence that makes you a human being. And when you look at Islam, Islam is the whole collection of all of those values and more, purified and more. So I want us to take a few of those, inshallah, with respect to our time. I don't know who's my timekeeper, because my device is here. Okay, I'll use my phone. It's fine. Now, so we look from that, then we can deduce that these must be probably the remnants of what those prophets and messengers have taught. So we make it easy for people to understand that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not come to reinvent the wheel, but he came to improve, and he came to also correct and rectify and remove what is filth that has been added, because we as human beings, unfortunately, we do not like to stay on the straight line. For some reasons, we like to explore the other lines that are stemming from the straight line. And when time goes, this happens, like inevitably it happens. And so this could be among those things. So I want us to check a few of those things. The idea of women carrying themselves in a certain way, in a particular fashion, where they would be told intombi salang intombi, which would mean that, you know, like they carry themselves in an appropriate manner, that is a modest way, that is an exemplary to a proper character, and that they behave in a certain fashion. Even how they would clothe themselves, or how they would carry themselves rather, when they didn't have much to wear as well, when they didn't have so much to wear. But you wouldn't find cases where they are flaunting, where also a lot of cases with, and by the way, it went both ways between men and women, because even the men, as well, that a young youth must behave like a proper, well-mannered and well-groomed youth, such that he wouldn't be finicking with women and, you know, tampering with them or touching them or anything like that. And this is an interesting point to basically ponder about. What was their clothing? In a sense, it was the value of modesty, the teaching that they were upon. And this is very, very important, because how many people still violate our sisters, although our sisters, they do their best to cover themselves properly, they wear the niqab, they wear the hijab and whatnot, but still some people are still perverted that far enough that they would still want to temper and uncover our sisters and things of that sort. Some even legislate laws and rules to basically prevent our sisters from observing their religious obligated modesty. And you can realize that it's mostly the values that the people observe that make the society to thrive. And this concept of intombi salang intombi was mostly about how you carry yourself. And that is to say, you do not do anything which is shameful, and you do not interact with the opposite sex in a manner that is not acceptable and allowed. Even as far as the seating is concerned, even as far as the gatherings are concerned, as we will see some of those. But in general, the concept of Ubuntu intombi salang intombi, this is a concept of what? Concept of modesty. And when you look at the goals of hijab, this is exactly the goal. The goals of hijab is that sisters are not humiliated, sisters are not harassed. And look at the ayat in Surah An-Nur about these matters. You will see the verses in the Surah 24. You will see how this whole thing is said. Even the men are commanded to lower their gaze. Although the sisters, they are covered, even the men are commanded to lower their gaze, so that he's not brought into his desires and he wants to tamper with the sister. No, the sister wants to tamper with the brother unlawfully and things of that sort. And then so when you see that correlation, then you realize that these values had to have been taught by someone who has been given that which is from divine, which is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another concept of that is the concept of sharing, the concept of giving to those who are in need, those who are running short. It's called uksiselana, where if you have and the have not happen to coincide, then you share. What you have, then you can give some of that, and you do not share so that they can always come back and ask you to share more and more and more. But you share in such a way that they would be the ones who now invite others to share with him. In what fashion? For example, if they would have livestock, they would then lend it to you. Then I'll say, you know what, take these, and then you look after it, maybe head these 2 calves until they give offspring, and then you take the offspring, and then I take my cows back. You already now have your own offspring to raise and whatnot. The next thing you have your own kraal, the next thing you have your whole head. Like that. And this is how they would behave. Likewise, those who are planting maize, from those who are planting beans, they would have something to like sort of barter and trade and so on. And if you are coming from a different area, then they would even give you a piece of land to basically start your family. Obviously, they have to vet you to be sure that you are a person who's really coming in with good intentions in the community and the society. You are really someone who's in need. And if they are confident with you, they would actually even give you a piece of land. And some could even marry their daughters to you, something to that effect. And this was to ensure that the society, no one is actually, like I would say, needy. Or rather, let's say, no one is actually stricken by poverty. You can be needy sometimes, because being needy means you do not have everything you need all the time, but your basic needs are taken care of. And this was happening on a societal level and on a community level. Anywhere you went, you found the same principle. Now, my issue with it is the fact that why would it be so widespread and diverse unless it had to be, given with a sense of, something in it for the one who does it. Either it's not because you do it because you like it, but it's because you believe in this concept that this is how you should be and this is how you should carry yourself. And so people identified with this concept. And when you look at the concept of zakat in and of itself is legislated to do exactly that, to elevate the state of living of another person. If you were to give zakat to someone, it should be in such a way that in a couple of years, if not a couple of months, this person should be in a position whereby he is no longer in need of the zakah, but maybe he might actually even be among those people who are what? Who are giving the zakah as well. Because you are not just doing it, in such a minimalistic way that this person would forever be dependent on you giving him. But rather, you are elevating him and raising his status in such a fashion that he himself will be among the givers. And that's why in the history of the Khilafah, as well as the Muslims in general, there was a case in point. I can't remember quite vividly which Khalifa it was during his time, that people they had no one to give zakat to. They had to leave it in bags, like those leather bags. They'd have to hang it. And, for anyone who could probably, be in need of it, they would leave it hanging by a tree or in a pathway somewhere for someone to basically, if ever he is among the recipients, because they couldn't find in their society anyone that could be a direct recipient of it. And the point in that is the fact that the barakah of that distribution and that exercise of the deen enabled that, because Allah provided for us before we were created. So meaning every person who's here, their provision is there. But it's a matter of maybe it might be in your pocket. By the way, it might be in your pocket. You need to give it to me, right? Right. Maybe some of mine is in your, maybe one of you. Right? I'm kidding, right? But it might be the case. So, and the case in point is the fact that zakat is the one element of our deen that brings that back, that brings it up. And so when I discuss this with other people, I say, look at it. Today, traditional people, they do not subscribe to this anymore. It's every man for himself at this day and point. So we tell them Islam is bringing you back to your roots. You are coming back to the proper way of being a proper human being, and Islam is the way to go. Because Islam has guidelines, Islam has prescriptions, it has, criteria. Because back then you do it if you feel like, or maybe you do it because you feel, your heart is at ease and whatnot. Today, very, very seldomly, you will find someone willing to give and not expecting even a thank you from you. They give you while they are waiting to see whether you're going to say thank you, And probably they know there's a bargain as well. They know they might need you for something in the future, so they give you now so that you owe them, You owe it to them. This is how people mostly, currently in our society, this is how it is. When they give you something, they have that element of saying, you know what? In the back, they don't tell you, but there's a condition to this gift, that when I am in need of such, then you will remember that I once gave you, There's this tendency when, like maybe a funeral happens or someone passed away or there's some marriage taking place in the society. Then you have those mamas, right, that come with 10 kgs of rice and whatnot. No, they even know to which type of rice they brought. If they brought Auntie Caroline, even the one receiving, they know Masban Bani brought Auntie Caroline, right? Masban brought his pego. The other one brought the other one that they don't like much, they call biryani one. I don't know why they don't like it, but I know they always complain that it's cheap stuff, right? And then they check who brought N.Ali, who brought, Iwisa, like that. They know. So that when Masban Bani who brought N.Ali comes, we will take N.Ali as well when they're having something. Some, they do it on purpose. They start a function that wasn't even necessary so that those who they used to give to, they can start now bringing to them. So it's a vicious cycle now. It's no longer about, giving without expecting anything in return. So Islam, however, it guarantees that, and this is the point we are making, that these values have been lost, and these values could have been given by a prophet of Allah back in the day. So what would take people back to it if not Islam? And that is what we are trying to say. So you know what? You used to give each other. You used to look after one another. You used to care for a foreigner when he comes. You used to care for someone who's from afar, who's a traveler. What happened to you people? You claim to be a traditional person, a traditional Zulu Xhosa. What happened to these values then? Why are your women behaving like this? Why are your men behaving like that? Why are you treating people who are from afar from you? Why are you treating them like this? Unless you have lost the element of Ubuntu in you, the thing that makes you to be a proper human being who's worthy of someone else's smile. And you can only retrieve that by becoming a Muslim. You can only retrieve that by coming back to Islam. Because all of these values in Islam, they are improved. Multiple versions, It's not, Islam will forever be the latest version of any of these things, of any of these practices. And that's the goal of these discussions. And I hope it's received in that fashion throughout and in the discourses if ever you have to engage in it. Now, is it possible that, once again, because civilization, they leave a trail at times. Certain civilizations, they leave a trail. They sort of leave like a footprint that we once walked here, And like I said, because I tend to speculate sometimes in certain things, to sort of to broaden the scope of my mind of why would this concept exist among our people. Especially from a Zulu background, we have this concept of ukuqasithandaze and things like that. And the name for me struck me because why is it called like that? Because ukuthandaza means praying, And kneeling is part and parcel of praying, like a sajda, you have a ruku and things of that sort. Why would they call it like that, And this is one thing you can obviously find is that it's regarded as a sacred place. It's regarded as a sacred heart, such that other families, even though they will build with cement and concrete and whatnot, they'll still make one, right at the one side of the yard, and they will keep that. And it's a common thing in other places when you travel, especially deep in Zululand, you'll find there's no single house without ukuqasithandaze or anything of that sort. Now, yes, there's right, is it? Yeah. So, because interesting enough, you can't walk in, like how you walk in through the door. You definitely have to, you have your knee on the floor to basically come inside, But the point is, the term is called ukuqasithandaze, and the word masjid refers to what? Place of sajda, place of prostration. It's named after the action that takes place and after the practice that is usually done over there. And so with this speculation, please pay attention to that word. With this speculation, it is one of those things that begs the question, could this be the influence of a prophet? And could this be what we now consider a masjid? Could it be something that possibly back then? And this is something that is open to being researched and verified and checked whether it's even, like correlated in that fashion. But one of the things that will make this discussion a bit more interesting, or this speculation rather, to be more interesting, is the issue of, okay, first of all, this was my own silly humor with the issue of the dome, like the dome that in most masajid, you have, right, but there's no real correlation to that. But I was like thinking, it's quite interesting that Muslims like to highlight certain masajid or certain special places with like domes and whatnot, like Dome of the Rock and things like that, but Allahu A'lam, right? Now, when a Muslim prays, he has a particular direction that he faces, right? Which is the Qibla, which is the Kaaba. And you find that in this heart, there's a place when you walk in, and when you have to do any ritual, you are supposed to face that direction. Inside there, and it's usually opposite to the entrance. Like you enter, that other end is that place. And one of the rules, particularly, one of the rules is that you do not sit with your back against it. One of the rules when you enter there is that you either sit in its direction or adjacent to the direction. Sounds familiar? Huh? Where do you know this concept from? Huh? Yeah, but the idea, okay, the concept of you either face this direction or you sit adjacent to it, where do you get that from? Huh? Now, right? You understand the issue of the masjid. In the masjid, usually, unless obviously, like by necessity of giving a lecture, like the imam and whatnot. But generally, it's an advice that when you are sitting in the masjid, you either face the direction of the qibla or adjacent to it. Do not just have the qibla, like behind you, or like you have your back against the direction of the qibla. In a nutshell, unless, as I said, by necessity. And we know as well, when we relieve ourselves, we have to also consider facing either east or west if the qibla is in the north direction or anything of that sort. And so this is how, once again, certain things become much more interesting when you find this, and then you wonder, why would these people really consider this to be an abominable act or something that is wrong to do? And we as well, we understand that part of honoring the Kaaba is that you face in its direction, whenever you're involved in anything which is good, like maybe you are sitting in the masjid, or, like those kinds of guidelines. And once again, as I said, even if it may be like 100% coincident, we still consider it to probably be a coincidence, but it begs the inquiry. Could this be something that one prophet of Allah may have taught, and hence Islam brings it back because it was part and parcel of how people were supposed to be? And because Islam is universal, and we know every prophet that came with Islam. They didn't come with something different. And so when we bring this forward, it becomes a bit more interesting. And I used to make this presentation in 2016 quite a lot, every Friday in most cases. We had a college there. We have a college there that would come there back in Assalam, and I used to make this presentation. And a lot of people found themselves agreeable to it. Then I said, okay, so what issues do you have with Islam then? Because if it's not taking away from your culture, rather it's helping you to improve and become a better Zulu or a better Xhosa or a better Sotho, then why don't you become a Muslim? And a lot of people got stumped. And alhamdulillah, I have 2 people who embraced Islam in those discussions, alhamdulillah. And so we thank Allah that certain things, when we try to clarify to people, because sometimes these are superficial matters. It should be that people, when you tell them about Tawheed, this is the most important thing that makes sense to them. But you find that they will agree to Tawheed. They'll agree that Muhammad SAW had to be a prophet. But still they will say, yeah, but I am Zulu. As if that's a wrong, that's like, there's no relationship between being Zulu and embracing Islam. They treat it like, okay, yeah, but now, then it means I have to lose being Zulu if I accept Islam. No. You come with it, but become a Muslim, Once you become a Muslim, you will automatically be the best Zulu that ever was. You'll automatically become the best Malawian. If you follow Islam, you won't lose, the authentic Zulu, the authentic Xhosa, you won't lose it. You won't lose your authentic Indianness by becoming a Muslim. You would actually be the proper Indian that Allah created, the proper Zulu that Allah created, because you will be exactly as how the Creator wanted you to be. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Allah did not create the jinn and mankind except that He is worshipped alone. So once you fall in line, you are in that, then that's where you have it. And this is the point, because this is to clear out a lot of misconceptions, as I said. A lot of misconceptions come from our people in our society that, okay, but now I have to live out and this, and that's why, inshallah. The issue of mountain prayers, and you find that people who have revived it, try to bring it back, are the Shembe people. They try to revive this because it's something of old, actually, that when droughts and think of Salatul Istisqa, like when we pray for rain and things like that, they consider that to be very important. And it used to be the case back in the olden days, where the elders, they would slaughter an animal, and then they would ask Allah to send the funny idlozi. Yeah, idlozi lembula, right? He's saying Mikael because the angel of rain is called Mikael. They used to call it Tunum Kobolani, And interesting enough is that they understood that there's a creation of Allah that is responsible for it. And once again, for me, it's giving me a lot of, like headlights of saying this had to be communicated through revelation of some sort. Because why would they expect the Creator to have a designated creature that is responsible for rain? And they would come and demanding that this creature must be sent so that it brings rain. And Allah would respond to them, subhanallah. I have one auntie who still today, alhamdulillah, she's Muslim. Her name is Aisha. She's very elderly but very, energetic. She comes a lot here in the office. She knows that from her own childhood. When I made this presentation, she was there. She said, we used to be, like go with the grannies and things like that. And this is how they used to go about it. And so this begs the question then, why would people be still distant from Islam unless they are not well informed that Islam does not take away your ethnic background. Rather, it improves it and purifies it and makes you the best kind that can ever be. كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تعمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. That you are extracted from the people for the people. Allah takes you from the people, improves you through Islam, elevates you, purifies you, so that when you go back there, they must never find a better version of a Zulu than you. They must never find a better version of a Xhosa than you as a Muslim. Because you have something in it that is there, that elevates you, that makes you the best person you can ever be. And that is if you subscribe to Islam, obviously. And this is what we want people to be invited to. And this is how we show them. And the concept of prayers being answered immediately, and prayers not being rejected, we find it in the concept of Mina as well. Yawm Arafah, we know this is a teaching that is there. And I always try to bring that in the discourse and discussion and say, we believe, exactly, we have a mountain. If you go up there during a certain season and time, and you pray over there, your prayers are accepted. And so you are not really losing out doing your mountain prayers. If ever you are so too much connected to praying in the mountain, no problem. When you go for Hajj, we'll take you to Arafah, then you will pray on the mountain and your prayers will be answered. So you are not losing out at all by becoming Muslim. We see that some people know the value of it, and hence they try to bring it back in their religion, particularly the Nazareth Baptist people, also known as Shembe people. They try to revive that, and they try to make it a special aspect of their religion. And that's because it's recognized from a traditional perspective. Mind you, they try to collaborate between what is in the Bible and the tradition itself. And we obviously have something better to offer with Islam with regards to like special days like Yawm Arafah, the day of Arafah in the mountain of Arafah. And so it is definitely something to ponder about and see how this could be used as a tool. And mind you, this is just an instrument from the instruments that can be used. But as I said once again, the primary goal of da'wah is to invite people to worshiping Allah alone without any partners. So if anything else, this is more like a backup for people usually when they try to make an excuse about not becoming Muslim, and then they bring their culture into the discussion. And then you can tell them, you know what, Islam has something better to offer with regards to this matter. If you like mountain prayers so much, don't worry, inshallah. If Allah facilitates, we'll take you for Hajj. And you'll have the best mountain to make dua in and the best day of doing so. And you will definitely know that your prayers are heard, and they're basically direct. Mind you, because as I said earlier on, they would actually even slaughter an animal, and look at the fact that the whole rite of Hajj includes slaughtering, is slaughtering and going for Arafah and things of that sort. I can't remember what comes first between the slaughtering and going to Arafah. Arafah first and then slaughtering, nah? Like that, likewise, alhamdulillah. So it is essentially those type of things that, this is more like a good shortcut to, denouncing and debunking these false claims that Islam is for a particular race and tradition, and hence the focus is particularly here. And I can always advise people who are from different backgrounds, if they suffer from the same misconceptions, because I do not know as much as other traditions as concerned how, but I know Zulus to be very, 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 staunch about being Zulu. I think they are probably in South Africa among the most proud people of being Zulu, and it comes off as terrible, to a certain instance, because it's very, what you call nationalistic. Zulus are generally very nationalistic in a nutshell compared to other, other races, rather not races, other tribes rather. Zulus seem to be, I don't know whether it's the case at N1, because they are in KwaZulu-Natal as well or what, I don't know. But you say it again? They fight for the kingdom. Yeah. They fought part of them. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you find that there's a lot of, there's a chip on the Zulu shoulder in general when it comes to being Zulu, Yeah, you can say whatever you can say, but I am Zulu at the end of the day. It's a bit of an arrogance, definitely, so yeah, that's my point. That's my point exactly, They have something, to show for it and say, the king is from us, we are from him, and things of that sort. So, but we have something better to offer. We have the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to offer as an icon for everyone, and this is the beauty of Islam. Now, we also look at other practices, as I did mention that we look at some practices and then we see how they correlate to the practices in Islam. Particularly, this one is one of the striking ones as well. The fact that traditionally there is something known as imbelego. I think in Sud they say pelego or something, if I'm not mistaken. Anyone who's very, his suit to his own point? What is it called? When you slaughter an animal after a child newly born, like when a child is born, usually that is done. I don't know who else in other this thing do they do. Do Xhosas do the same thing? Xhosas possibly? But in Zulu, they would slaughter an animal, and this animal usually is slaughtered because the child is born, and some kind of rituals are done as well with regards to that. Now, obviously, because it got distorted, and now it has to do with the ancestors and things like that, protecting the child and thanking them and so forth. It's a very fine line, because if you think about it, when we do it, obviously implementing the sunnah, as well as this is like, prayer in and of itself. We ask Allah, to protect the child and to give them a good growth and protection, and thanking Him as well. We donate some of it, to get the barakah, the barakah to fall on the child, and things of that sort. Now, and so we then realize from that if there is such a thing as a aqiqah, and it's done appropriately in Islam, then, the person would not find it difficult to teach that and take up the Islamic one, because the Islamic one is verified, authenticated, and we know who taught it. Because one of the fundamental things about these points we are touching on is the fact that, as I said, that's why we say it's a speculation, because we can't verify them, all the way to the origin. We can't take it all the way back. I know from the chat, one of the brothers was asking if we could explain. Let me just check quickly. He said, can the brother, not the sheikh, the brother, is a correction. The brother explained why no messenger in the culture by they only consider spiritual elders and descendants. Okay. He's asking why people who are usually subscribing to the cultural practices, they always refer to elders and refer to, spiritual guides, or those who, basically the soothsayers, the sangomas and whatnot. And Allah knows best with regards to that, why they don't refer to prophets, because we have little to nothing that can be traceable all the way to the prophets. So that's why we can only understand that there was a prophet through the Islamic, the Islamic source of information, which is the Quran. Because before the Quran could tell us that actually Allah sent prophets. That's why some people are still repelled from Islam, because they want to have a prophet of their own, because they feel like there's a vacuum. Why all the other races and nations have a prophet that is known by name, that is from that race. And so they feel like there's a void. So then Islam tells us, no, you've had those who came before. Although you may not know them by name, because Allah told the Messenger ﷺ that there are some that we informed you of them and some which we did not inform you. And we believe 100% that even so people in general, they were supposed to refer to a prophet, but I guess maybe the age was, the age gap in terms of the generations is probably huge, such that people do not know a prophet anymore. And hence they refer to even the soothsayers and the witch doctors and sangomas as the point of reference now, which is a shame, because they are referring to people who are not supposed to be listened to at all. The Kohan, the soothsayers, and the Muslim knows you can't go to them, you can't listen to them, you can't believe in what they have to say. Going to them, your salah for 40 days is not accepted. Believing in them is disbelief in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you can imagine those are some of the things that hopefully we can rescue our people through Islam from, because it's a very good observation the brother has made, because that's what basically now everyone refers to. You know, those who claim to interpret dreams, but they themselves, they are jinn-stricken by jinnat, and they are now put as the point of reference and, like sort of the ulama of the community to basically refer back to, which is unfortunate. And so Islam provides a holistic provision for all of these kinds of things, alhamdulillah. So when we look at aqiqah as well, a lot of shirk happens in it when it comes to the traditional way, and hence we invite and bring people back to Islam. So you know what? We are not taking away your slaughtering. We know you love your meat as well, right? So we are not saying, and the beauty of it is that we are not extreme like some of the born again, like some of the Christians, especially the born agains. The born again Christians, they totally denounce anything by like slaughtering, while they were trying to avoid obviously this also almost idol worship or this polytheism that happens in the slaughtering, but they took it too far as well. That's why one of our teachers tells us that Islam, we are in the middle of two false extremes, or between the two falsehoods. Meaning we are not extremely that side because it's falsehood that way, or that side because it's falsehood, but we are in the middle path. We are, in a moderate position, and we put ourselves in that position when we observe Islam. And so we do not go to extremes and say this is not, because there's a foundation, there's a basis of it. Like how we slaughter during Qurbani, there's a basis for it. But this is a form of worship. And this is important because الذبح لغير الله, this is shirk. To slaughter for other than Allah is complete shirk. So when you invite the person and tell him, listen, we are not saying take away your slaughtering. We are saying slaughter for the one to whom slaughtering is done for. قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ وَبِذَلِكَ أُمِرْتُ وَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. That say all of my salah, all of my nusuk is any slaughtering, any sacrifice that you do, which is to slaughter, is for Allah. It's for Allah alone. My life and my death for Allah alone. And this is what we want people to come back to. But that's the point. You don't want to tell them, no, leave this thing, all of this is wrong. Tell them no. How you are going about it is incorrect. What you are doing is not necessarily a wrong deed in and of itself. But the element that you've added to it, like talking to your ancestors and praying to other than Allah, this is what makes it wrong. So you still want to chow the meat? We also want to chow the meat, but we want it to be halal. So you must mention the name of Allah, and you must do it which is in line with the Sharia. Then we can chow the meat, no problem. So, and the child will be safe because it's created by Allah. Allah nurtured this child in his mother's womb this whole time for 9 months. Why should you then submit him to other than Allah? When Allah created him, He put him in his mother's womb, safeguarded him. Your ancestors were not involved in the whole process. Why should they be involved when the child is born? Why do you add them? You don't need them. Allah is sufficient, And this is how we try to obviously not repel people by saying everything you're doing is wrong, whatever about your culture and your background is wrong. No. We know that among the Arabs there were certain good traits as well, even before Islam. Good traits of Jahiliyyah. They used to honor their guests. They used to take pride in honoring their guests. And that cannot be taken away from them. With the shirk that they were doing, but it could not be taken away from them. And so this is why then Islam says, keep the good, drop the bad, and the good is that which is in line with the Quran and the Sunnah. And whatever else that is outside of that is rejected, is unacceptable. And therefore, we see that when we look at these things from this angle, it's not difficult for a lot of people to accept, because they understand that they are not really being phased away from what they identify as, which usually at that time, this is the biggest highlight. It's like you can take away my wealth and everything, but you can't take away who I am, who I identify as. That's why I keep emphasizing that we have to emphasize that Islam is better, because Islam is better, and it comes with something that is verifiable, that is traceable, that is reliable, and that we guarantee that is acceptable to Allah. Because it's the whole point. Because as much as we are doing almost the same thing, we are not actually doing the same thing. Because my intention is for the sake of Allah, your intention is for the sake of your great-grandfathers. And this one is taking you to Jahannam, this one is taking you to Jannah. And so we obviously have to show that Islam is of the highest price, it's actually priceless. And that's why I always advise when it comes to comparison, that you must always make the distinction, because Islam is incomparable to anything. But when you bring these things up, you are bringing them up from an angle of saying, listen, you are not actually losing that, but you are getting what is better than it. So you are trading whatever you had, because it was actually misleading you instead. You are comfortable with it, but it's misleading you. So trade it for that which is better. You will enjoy in this world, and also you have another greater prize in the hereafter. So what I find is, people, they find that, oh, this is interesting. Oh, so also you do this and whatnot. Some even, like tell others, and subhanAllah, this is the thing. They tell others, did you know Muslims also, they slaughter, and whatnot. They actually are the ones who come and say, yeah, you all are better than the born-again Christians. The born-again Christians, they call our ancestors demons, and they tell what we're doing is wrong, everything about it and whatnot is harmful to animals and things of that sort. So you're better if you agree to it, you must accept it, But there is justification. Some will say, you know what, I'll think about it, it makes sense. But I remember one time when we were doing this presentation, one old man was sitting like how you're sitting, very attentive, and he's just there, not saying a word. Then when I finished doing the presentation, the one question he asked, he said, my son, I heard everything you said, and I agree with everything you said. But my main question to you is, where are your elders who are like black like me, but they are like your elders? Because I was quite younger then as well. I'm still young, I believe, right? So then he said, where are the elders who are upon the same thing that you are saying from your same race? Meaning, who are black like you, Zulu like you, people who grew up in this. Because to them, this is new. And it's coming from a child. And so for them, it's like, the one thing that discredits it is, how does this child come and talk about these, like ancient and traditional background things? Where are his elders in this, That's the question he basically asked me. Other than that, he approved of everything. But he was just curious to find out, do you have any old men? Because I think he felt like, because we were very young, we were coming from a school. So all of us were coming from a school. So we were a team of students, basically, right? So for him, I think he thought like, no, this is, I can't listen to these boys. These boys, they are always changing, Today you're following them, the next thing they leave you alone, they are following something else. I think he felt a sense of that in the whole discourse. Okay, I thought my slide wasn't going to work. Now, there's another practice as well, because traditionally people used to use skin, cow skin, as clothing, and also other animal skin like buck skin and so forth. So when they would bury as well, they would slaughter a cow. Interesting enough, today people are still slaughtering cows, but they are burying in coffins, which is very interesting. Because it shows that they've lost the concept, the real context of the practice itself. When they would slaughter back in the days, they would slaughter so that they could actually retrieve enough skin to wrap the deceased with. So they wore skin as clothing. So when they are getting buried, they also use the same thing that they would be wearing when they are, which is skin, cow skin. Today, what do we wear? We wear cotton. And when a Muslim is buried in what? In what he usually essentially wear, which is cotton. And this is how I draw the parallel with them and say, you know what? You are the ones who left your tradition. Yeah. And I always make them feel, feel some type of way about it. I said, people of other races, they are practicing your culture better than you. Because the Indians, they slaughter aqiqah. Right? The same ones you're saying, they are a different race. Indians are doing aqiqah, isn't it? Arabs are doing aqiqah in other races. You are doing a false, wrong aqiqah. And also when you get buried, you're buried in a box and things of that sort, but you still say you're traditional. I said, how traditional are you really? It's a question to ask them at times. But the point is, this is how they would go about it. They would slaughter, and then they would, obviously, it's two birds with one stone. They will eat the meat, serve the meat, and then they will also take the skin, because it's soft, so they can basically turn it nicely. Like there's something called tanning, which is you clean it and make it this thing. And this is acceptable even in Islam as well. If you turn a skin, then it's good to use, inshallah, if it's for an animal that is essentially halal to eat. Now, and then you would find that they would do that, and they will prepare the body, and they will carry it in that what we call a stretcher. In Zulu it's called uhlaga. Uhlaga. Then you carry the person with that. And essentially when you bury a Muslim, it's pretty much the same process, right? You wrap him with the clothing, the clothing material, which is cotton. Obviously we know the kafan, how it should be, and the guidelines around that. And you also do what? And you wrap him up and you bury him, not in a coffin. You carry him with a nice stretcher as well. Or we have now those modern ones that you can open and put him and cover and things like that. But essentially, it's the same practice in and of itself. And I usually deal with this case when people are complaining about, no, but you people do not bury in a coffin. Why do you bury in a coffin? And why do you bury like so early? And I say, well, this is the way of your own forefathers. They used to bury as soon as possible, because there were no fridges, to freeze people and make them popsicles, and then after that you bury them. There was nothing like that. So a person would be buried in less than 3 days generally, because after that the body starts telling that, okay, yeah, decomposing. And one of the earliest things that decompose is like the internals, the entrails, and they start like flowing, things like that, and some juices start flowing. So they wouldn't wait for that long. That's why some people who are far, sometimes they would come and only be shown the grave, because they were not there, on time, so they wouldn't be waiting for. And the justification that people are making right now is that, no, we have to wait for our relatives and whatnot. No, this is the concept you brought because you're trying to cater for people who are working from afar. Back in the days where you didn't have to work, you just only had to head cow and other like livestock. Everyone was there. Everyone was present to go ahead with the processions and whatnot. Getting the grave dark, and preparing the body, killing the cow, and preparing the skin and things like that. And essentially that's what we do as Muslims. Once we verify the person is gone, khalas, we make arrangements. There's nothing new. So this is one thing I'm very proud whenever I express to them, because they pay certain funeral parlors. I know funeral parlors are going to kill me for this. They're going to kill me for this funeral parlors. Like they'll hunt me for this. But we don't deal with funeral parlors. We don't deal with, this, what they call them. What do they call those? Life cover or something, insurance. Yeah, we don't deal with none of that, alhamdulillah. Whenever I talk about it, they say, my insurance is the Muslims, My funeral parlor is the Muslims. Therefore now, the Muslims is upon their heads by legislation that they must bury me. They can't leave me lying on the floor. They have to bury me. Yeah, if I have or not, they must make a plan, because it's a sin upon them, So I'm totally secured and insured by Allah, through the deen of Allah. And so I have no issues. Now, and subhanAllah, because these things, they're getting deprived a lot, To touch on this a little bit further, a lot of our grannies especially, they are the ones who suffer the biggest blow, because they are left with grandchildren and whatnot, and they have to cover everyone with their small pension, and the children are going to school with meager uniform, they don't have the right shoes, because the shoes cost as much as the amount that the granny has to give, so they are always indebted and whatnot. We say Islam is freeing you. You don't have to worry about that anymore. You don't have to worry about, hey, if I do not make my installment, then it's going to default. And look at how they steal from people. It's going to default. If you don't pay a certain number of premiums, then khalas, everything you paid is like you never paid it before. It's gone. Then you have to, because there's a fine print there that people usually don't read, because they are playing on people's fear. That's what will happen to me when I die. You say, what will happen to me when I die? What I worry about is what will happen to me after I die. Will I answer the question, Man Rabbuk, Man Dinuk, Man Nabiyuk? Will I be able to answer these questions? This is what we worry about. Because no one can guarantee where you will die and who will be there and who wouldn't be there. How many people they pay these insurances, but you can't even find their limbs to bury. So they end up burying clothes, some people, because they can't find the person. He disappeared, then they confirm the person is gone, can't do anything. But this person has been paying for the rest of his life from the time he started working. And so Islam frees us from all of these things, and this is what we try to bring to our community. Honestly, this is something that Islam, people, is the answer to all of the questions. Is the solution to all of these issues that we have and the ills that we have. And like I said, I hope the people of the funeral parlors don't come for me. Now, other things that I want us to look at, inshallah, then I want us to go back to the discussion we did touch on earlier on. is with regards to some of the practices in the Zulu tradition. The right hand is the hand for eating. It's called the sandla sokudla for a reason. And it's no surprise that in Islam, this is what you are instructed to eat with, which is the right hand. And also polygamy is something that you will find among the Zulus. People who are traditionalists, they usually, polygyny rather, is something that is well welcomed. There are no issues there. I know some sisters would kill me for this part, you know. But anyways, I have brothers, so I can see a lot of agreement. Everyone is like, yes, this is how it is. Now, so you tell the Zulu man, say, but I have 2 wives, you say, come with them, you know. I have 4, you say, come with them, you know. I believe Zuma has about 5 now. You tell him just divorce 1, khalas, come. You still have 4 to keep, no stories. Now, and cleaning ourselves as well is something that is known, that they would obviously like disappear in the outskirts, and obviously they would clean themselves and wash themselves, wipe and wash. You know, these curds of soil, this is what was used traditionally. They never had like, you know, toilet paper or anything like that. And this is what is known as istijmar in Islam, where you use like some mud rocks and whatnot to wipe, and then you wash after that. And so when people come and flaunt the idea, no, but you wipe yourselves with your hands. I'm like, hey, hold on. You're the one who's missed the tradition. You're the one who's gone far, you know. So you've gone off the trail. That's your problem. So usually we revive these type of things to show them, listen, all the values that you could think of, that you think your way of life has, Islam has something better than that. Islam provides what is better than that. And the issue of circumcision, I know some traditions, they still, you know, value it. Alhamdulillah, Islam is very well encouraged that people get circumcised. And there are many more kind of relatable subjects in this fashion. Now, would it be fair then to say Islam is for black people as well? Khair, inshallah. We want to touch on this subject particularly because it's one of the things which are an obstacle to the dawah. They are a biggest obstacle to the dawah to a Zulu person or a traditional person in general. They believe in Amadlozi being, in the way they understand it, to be the spirits of their ancestors. Now, the word Amadlozi in and of itself, when you find out, it wasn't understood to refer to ancestors per se. It was understood to spiritual beings that look after certain things, which means they would protect. That's why they would say the angel of rain and crops, they would say Lozilem and the angel of mountains, they would call Lozilentaba, all those kind of things. And so I find this to be probably one of the things where things are lost in translation for people. Because the word ingelosi is not a Zulu word in and of itself. It's a borrowed word. And so then it begs the question, what was the true word for an angel? And so when you understand that, then you contextualize the understanding that the people have about Izingelosi or Amadlozi in this case, then you will realize how they conflated the issues. They believe that these are the souls of their ancestors instead of believing that, no, this is an independent creation that is responsible for this, not the souls of those who pass away. Usually when I clarify these type of things, alhamdulillah, I've always had a better understanding being, you know, accepted from that. To say that, no, the souls of the people who pass away, they are a different creation. And the spirits that look after the creation, they are a different creation that already exists before anyone dies. Meaning they exist even before the first person who was killed, the son of Adam, alayhi salam, existed. So it does not require anyone to die so that they can exist those creation or those spirits that look after the creation. When we clarify this and then we tell them that these creatures of Allah, they obey Allah. They don't listen to us. They listen to Allah. Allah is the one who commands them. So then it becomes useless to ask them for something that you can ask from Allah to send them for it. You see, the formula is, I needed the board, but it's not here, unfortunately. I was going to basically put this down on paper. The fact that the mistake that they've done is, they ask the one who is sent to deliver the service, which would be the angel, for example. They will ask that one, instead of asking the one who sends the angel. And usually when I debunk this issue, I always make this example. I say, because the soothsayers tell the people, your luck is blocked by the fact that you haven't done this or that, done that. And then you ask, where is my luck coming from? Where is my fortune coming from? They'll say, from God. Say, okay, so who is it that can prevent what is from Allah to come to me? Who is that powerful to stop it? And the answer is, there's no one. So, but the belief that has been encouraged with people is that these are agents, they sort of like they have a free will to either give it to you or withhold it. And this is a problem, because they are trying to say that although Allah can give you something, you still have a problem, or you have to deal with your ancestors as well to basically get access to it. You're like, who are they? Because if they were working for Allah, then they are supposed to do Allah's command immediately. If they were working for Allah, they should be completing the work. I make an example of, ordering, like maybe debonairs and whatnot. Those guys, they come with bikes. I do not throw them rose petals if they came late. I do not prepare tea and coffee for them because they delivered my delivery very late. Rather, I report them. Who do I report them to? I shout at them, or who do I report them to? Their employer. So at the end of the day, all the matters go back to Allah. And this is what we always have to clarify. We clarify that no, we believe that the people who live, when they die, they are in another world. They have to deal with what they were doing in this world. They have no business with our lives. That's number one. Number two, Allah has a different creation. He doesn't have to choose from your ancestors. He doesn't have to choose from your ancestors which angel to deliver what blessing of Allah, which angel should deliver the protection of Allah upon you. And you do not deal with the angel, you deal with the one who employs the angel, which is Allah. In that way, a lot of clarity can be made, inshallah. Because this is a fundamental aqidah matter that if they do not get clarified, they end up ascribing to their ancestors the qualities of Allah, which is to give and take and to restrict and to cause harm and to bring benefit, which is obviously shirk in and of itself in the lordship of Allah, as well as shirk in his worship, because you're supposed to fear Allah, not your ancestors. They have no power and ability to do anything for you, but it's Allah who's doing everything for you. And Allah has created a creation to take care of to look after his creation, whether it's for the oceans, whether it's for the mountain, whether it's for the clouds, whether it's for rain and whatnot. When you teach people that aspect, then you have something to reckon with. Because a lot of them, like I said, they agree Allah is one. But the problem is they still believe others as well. They have the capacity of withholding and giving, depriving and taking away. Like for example, if a child is sick, they worried about their ancestors more, causing the children to be sick, than getting worried about Allah, depriving the child of safety or testing them with a sick child. And this is because they have substituted Allah with his creation, because of the fact that they are not taught from the sources. And it was a very valid question that was asked in the Zoom call with regards to the fact that these people, they usually, when it comes to these cultural practices, as they claim them, they refer to soothsayers and other, spiritual guides and whatnot. But they don't refer to prophets and messengers. Why? Because they do not have the sources. And so we have to offer them that which is best, which is the Quran and the Sunnah. And if you have that, khalas, you are sorted. And this is the point. And one great thing you really need to always look out for when you're giving dawah to a traditionalist is what they believe about the people who pass on. Because same thing when someone says, I want to become a Muslim, you want to clarify that. I used to do so when I was here, that whenever there's like someone who comes through, they say, no, I come from a Zulu background, I come from a traditional background. I remember I had to deal with two cases of two old lady, one old lady, one younger one, with the issue of like ancestral worship, itong, or like amadlozi, things like that. And I had to clarify the fact that there is no power and ability in anything that Allah has created except through him. And so when they understand that and they deal with Allah directly, then they do not need these spirits that are trying to communicate with them or that are trying to impress on them to do certain things. Because look at how they get overtaken by this. And this is the work of the jinnat as well and the shayateen. That they will control what they eat, they will control who they mingle with, they will control what they wear, they will control when they can go out and when they can stay inside. And this is not a proper living. This is not a proper living. And so we say we need to teach people the true aqidah, the belief which is, belief in Allah, in his angels, in his messengers, in his books, in the last day and in the qadr of Allah, the good and bad. So that people are not thrown into shirk because they are afraid of how things are happening. Because usually when people are in these dire situations, then they ask the wrong people, then they end up falling into something that is going to obviously enslave them even more. And this is the humiliation that happens. If you do not want to be the slave of Allah, then you'll be the slave of your own desires and any other despicable, any other lowly of the creation of Allah. Because the jinn are weak. The jinn are not, they are like lowly. The evil jinn are lowly. They are not, they are just, almost nothing. But they can overcome you and have power over you if you are ignorant of your religion. and you're ignorant of your aqidah, your belief system is not in place, then you'll be the playing ground for them. And this is what has happened to these people. And therefore, we ought to advise them with regards to this. And this is what I was saying, that when they believe that these spirits, the souls of those who pass away, they are the ones that guard. We said, no, Allah has angels to do that. Say, khalas, Allah has provided a creation that takes care of that. And this is very important. When they believe that, when they pass on, then their souls basically take up this mission. This is not verifiable. There's no verification whatsoever. This is from speculation, and rather from the people who are soothsayers and these so-called spiritual guides. And so we know that this is a confusion that they have, and it has to be clarified. In your dawah, you almost have to deal with this every now and then, especially dealing with Zulu people who are like from a traditional background of one. And so you have to trot that path very carefully and clear it out. Because you don't want someone becoming a Muslim but then still has a belief, he holds a certain belief which is against the belief in Allah and the belief in the angels, and this person still holds it. Because them saying La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah must also in and of itself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, must also be in line with the belief in Allah, in the angels, in the messengers, and so on and so forth. Likewise, those who believe anyone who dreams certain dreams is like a prophet or anything like that. We have to clarify prophethood and things of that sort. And the fact that they believe that this can harm you. You know, they literally can warn you. Say, no, I ain't. So you know, like the ancestors will punish you. Never do this. You know, never do this because the ancestors will punish you. I'll come to you, inshallah. I've noted you. You understand? Because this is the point. They believe, they trust in something that can never benefit them or cause harm. Instead of fearing Allah, they end up fearing these things because the ill information. And we have to clarify that because it's very predominant. And the issue of intercession, before I conclude, is the issue that sometimes some of them, they justify. They say, no, we do not worship them, but we only just, send them because they are closer to Allah than we are. This is what they understand. Right? This is the concept. And this is also the concept that people use sometimes for wasila incorrectly. They say, no, the awliya of Allah, they are at a better position, to communicate this to us. So we communicate them to them, then they take them to Allah. You say, who taught you this? Who taught you this concept? Because the polytheists, they said, مَا نَعْبُدُهُمْ إِلَّا لِيُقَرِّبُونَا إِلَى اللَّهِ زُلْفَى. They said, when they were taking these intercessors, and mind you, these idols were not just made up from thin air. They were made up from elevating certain righteous people within the society. Certain believing men, like Ya'uq and Nasr and like in the five that were during the time of N.Ali. They were pious people who were believing, and then after that, they elevated them too high, they deified them, made them sort of like partners with Allah. And this is how it happens. And so people are doing the same thing with the ancestors. And this is why we have to denounce it from among Muslims and non-Muslims. Because this is how shirk happens. It doesn't come from thin air. The shaitan makes it such beautiful that you love this person, and he looked after you when you were still alive. So you expect him to look after you even when they are gone. You understand? And this is how this concept basically comes in the family. No, our great-grandfather is, looking after us. He used to defend and protect us when he was alive. No, his ability to do anything, in qata anhu amalu. All of his action finish. Illa min thalath. The only thing that remains is if he was a teacher, he had knowledge and he taught it and people are benefiting from it, or he has a good son praying for him, or he did some kind of a donation that is still recurring and other people are benefiting from it. But as for protection, looking after you, dealing with your case, this is khalas, it's done. In qata anhu amalu. So we know Allah is the one who's ever living, and hence we want people to come back to that. And Allah told us that, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. Because they believe Allah is far. This is the misconception. They believe Allah is far. So those who die are the ones who get too closer to Him. No. Allah said, I am close. I am near. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. I respond to the one who calls upon me when he does call upon me. So we understand from that we do not need anyone between us and Allah. And so people who believe in this concept, they tend to do so. They justify it from that angle. They say, no, these ones are closer, so they will convey our message and our call and our prayers and so on and so forth. And this is how they miss the back, and then they end up obviously depending on them. Because your heart is going to be connected to the one that you think is capable of making things happen for you. If you know that you have a better relationship with the security guard downstairs than with the CEO, in the upstairs, then you'll always basically stop at the security guard. You won't even reach the CEO. But it would be very silly of you if the CEO told you, here's my card, here's my information, here's my keys. Whenever you need to see me, you can just come straight to the office, and you're still busy down there begging the security guy. You say, you know what, make a plan, man, so that I can get to the big man upstairs. In that fashion, then this is how you're violating the whole thing. And so we want people to separate and remove anything before them and focus on Allah directly and worship Him alone. And our people, unfortunately, when it comes to this matter, this is one of the deception that they are still connected to, where they think their ancestors will get them somewhere, one way or the other. So and when those things come, they, for some reason, they think they must go via them. They have to approve of it. So they still have to ask them, now our ancestors, can you give it to us? We say, khalas, no. If it's from Allah, Allah does not need a messenger to you. Allah does not need a messenger to you. Allah can take care of you without even the angels themselves. The angels are just being honored to do the work that Allah gives them. The messengers are just being honored by Allah to do the work that they are doing. So likewise, the friends of Allah, likewise anyone, they are basically being honored when they are given a task to do in the things that Allah does in His creation. And therefore, no one is elevated on the basis of that, but rather he's honored by Allah. And then we try to get closer to Allah through worshipping Him and submitting to Him and calling upon Him, depending on Him completely and solely, without depending on anyone else other than Him. And this is what is definitely one of the biggest obstacles in this tower when it comes to dealing with people who are very traditionalistic. Like I said, you will see they will agree with all of those things, but there's an element of shirk that unfortunately you have to clarify. And I'm sure you would come across it. And that's why when you're engaging, ask them, what's your take on the people who pass away? What do they become? And how do they get? I remember when we were doing one of the Quran Dawah projects in Umbilo, one of this thing, one guy, you remember the one who was saying, he doesn't believe in Jesus. Jesus is like an ancestor for other people, for another race. He believes in his own ancestors. Then I asked him, so you believe that all your ancestors are looking after you? He says, yes. I said, what about the other family members? Who's looking after them? And then he was stumped. Yeah. Then I said, okay, so then you have other family members, so they have to be protected. Now, who is protecting who, and who is protecting who? Because if there's 5 of us, which ancestor from all of the people who passed away, as many as they are generationally from Adam all the way, who is looking after who? You must be the special one, so how do you know? Because if myself and my father and my mother and my brother, all of us, we have certain specific ancestors looking after us, I have to know who's looking after me. So that if I have to do an offering, I don't give to the wrong one, because I don't know if they would reject anyways. Would you reject a gift when someone's giving it to you? It's easy to anger them. Because if I'm the one giving you the service, but you're busy paying that guy, what's going to happen? But with Allah, you know exactly where your worship is going. You know exactly where your offering is going. So is it not logical that you just deal with the one that you will never miss when it comes to delivering your service or delivering your offering? And like, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ, that He has no partners. You know for a point that your package is going to get to the right address. And this is how we go about this matter, inshallah, in a nutshell. There are other subsidiary matters, but this is one of the fundamental things you have to clarify and sort of like, make people phase away, because you find a lot of people, they accept the truth, but they still have this thing which is an opposing to it. And we ask Allah, you obviously, to rectify us and rectify them and use us as a means to guide others. Nas'alullah as-salamata wal afiyah min kulli shar. We ask Allah to protect us from all evil and to keep us upon Islam and make us a means to guide others to Islam. Allahumma hadina wa hadi bina wa ja'alna sababa liman ihtada. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.
الشهيد الشهيد اللطيف